Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aubriana Kimbrough, and I'm the program officer at Washington Area Women's Foundation. And I'm excited to welcome you to our Ask Her, Our Power, Our Legacy. As we come together today for Women's History Month, I want to extend a warm welcome to each of you, especially those who may be joining for the first time. The Women's Foundation is a community supported organization that invests in the power of girls and women of color in the Washington, D.C. region. Through our commitment to grant making and advocacy, we drive transformative change by amplifying the voices and experiences of women and girls of color and collaborate with partners to influence policies and philanthropy with a focus on gender and racial equity. Before I introduce our moderator today, just want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. We encourage you to actively participate in the webinar by sharing your comments in the chat. Additionally, feel free to submit any questions for our panelists using the Q&A function located at the bottom of the screen. At the end of discussion, we'll take a moment to answer your questions. And finally, if today's conversation piqued your interest or inspires you in any way, we invite you to help us empower and build the next generation of change makers in our region by making a gift to the womensfoundation.org/askher. Your gift today will help us accelerate racial and gender equity and give women the power and resources they need to take change and reach their highest potential. Now, without further ado, to introduce and moderate this conversation, I'd like to welcome Beth Johnson, founder and CEO of RP3 Agency and former board chair of the Women's Foundation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to be here this afternoon. The Women's Foundation has been a really important part of my life, really for almost 2 decades now. And I'm very proud to have met so many incredible women and mentors in my career over the years, and also women who truly invest in this community to lift up women and girls of color. It is such a privilege to be here, and especially now during Women's History Month, it's a time to honor and to celebrate the remarkable achievements of women. I just had a fabulous lunch with two women in my life, so I was really inspired to have this conversation today. And I am joined by three incredibly dynamic women. Each has shattered the glass ceiling on their own as entrepreneurs and change makers in their respected fields. And from overcoming obstacles to catalyzing change, each has a journey to share that I think will inspire us all. So I'll start with just brief introductions, and then we'll go into some questions. And again, welcome you to chat with me in the chat and send in questions so that I can incorporate them into the dialogue. First, we have, it's such a privilege to have Sonya Ali. Sonya is a family member and co-owner of the beloved Ben's Chili Bowl enterprise, which has been part of the fabric of this community for, I think, something like 6 decades. Sonya has worn numerous hats in the family enterprise, from Director of Human Resources to Director of Operations, Marketing, Retail. I think she's done it all, and currently oversees all e-commerce and catering operations. And prior to joining her husband, Ben Jr., in the family business, Mrs. Ali served as a customer service expert, curriculum developer, and certified master trainer for the Department of the Navy. So Sonya is a retired United States Air Force reservist with over 20 years of service in aerospace medicine. Born and raised in the Chicago area, she now calls DC home, and she's a founding member of Ben's Chili Bowl Foundation, and she and her family are deeply, deeply committed to many nonprofits in the region, including one that I'm a part of, Leadership Greater Washington. Sonya, welcome.
Thank you.
And next we have Denise Collazo. So and Denise is amazing. For 25 years, Denise has been a key builder of faith in action. which is the nation's largest organizing network for faith and spiritual communities. And she most recently served as a senior advisor for external affairs. But even more impressive is Denise has just written an award-winning book called Thriving in the Fight. And you have to share the cover of it because it's beautiful. A survival manual for Latinas on the front lines of change. And I think Denise describes this book as a love letter to Latina leaders and reminding them, and of course, the rest of us, of their power and the unique role for the fight in social justice. And so she and her life partner, Julio, love living in Puerto Rico, and they have two amazing daughters. And so such a wonderful, a wonderful and beautiful life. Welcome to you, Denise.
Thank you so
And then
much.
last but not least, we have Destiny Daniel, who is our youngest, but equally as impressive panelist this afternoon. So Destiny is committed to inspiring marginalized minority women to pursue their own purpose. And she is so incredibly impressive, going through finals right now, a graduating senior at Howard University, and gearing up for grad school. Destiny is the former Washington Area Women's Foundation Rockstar Awardee. Destiny, and this, wait for it, she has completed 19 nonprofit internships, worked within 11 campus executive boards, and participated in 10 transformative fellowships during her matriculation. The social justice work that Destiny holds most dear is evident in her entrepreneurial roles as a full spectrum doula and childbirth educator. And by the way, she's 21 years old. Can you all believe this? Such an incredible young woman. Destiny, we are so excited to have you on the panel today. Thank you. So, Sonya, let's
Yes.
start with you. As a co-owner of Ben's Chili Bowl, I'm curious to know, and hearing you talk about, you have family meetings every Friday and what that might be like. What shaped your decision to become involved in the family business, and how has that journey been for you to become a business owner?
So I would say that it's maybe twofold. I grew up in a family business in Indiana. My grandparents and my dad had it was called Ross Food and Paper Supply. So I grew up seeing that family and my uncles come in and my aunt when she would come to town, seeing those family dynamics play out. And then once I settled here in DC, and my husband, actually before he met me, he told one of his friends, he said, "You see her over there working? I'm going to marry her because I can see her working in the business. She's working as hard as my mom works." And lo and behold, we finally were introduced, and we've been together ever since. So, but I have been very much impressed with my mother-in-law. She's been a wonderful role model. She is amazing. She's kind. She's generous. And if I'm 62, if however many years I have left, if I can be as loving and caring, as gracious as she is, I think I'm doing something. But a family business is challenging when you have 5, 6 people with varying ideas and opinions, but at the end of the day, we try to all come together, as a unit and push the business forward. So I would say that that's probably been the most challenging as well as one of the most rewarding, because you really, really learn to work together, and
Now,
so it's been a journey.
talk to us a little bit about the restaurant industry and what it's like to be a woman in a leadership position. Are there any unique challenges related to that? And if so, how do you overcome them to, just kind of keep your eye on the success of the business?
I think there are challenges. I think though, for me, we're coming into a business that's, so well known, in the area. Um, so some of the challenges are a little bit different. So I look for ways to be involved and empower young women that work for us in any of our entities. I'm also on the board of the Restaurant Association advocating for restaurants and for the restaurant workers, because women make up about 85% of the restaurant industry in terms of workers. And I'm also a part of an organization called Regarding Her, DC, and it is an organization that is for women, by women, run by women, and we really do support each other in every way you can imagine, with resources. I just got an email the other day. Hey, somebody said, hey, I have a wonderful sous chef. Can anybody use him? It just, everything. It runs the gamut. And so I think that um, looking for opportunities like that to be involved in the community are things that, I really get jazzed about. So.
Well, thank you. Denise, let's turn to you. Now, as a trailblazer in your own right in the, kind of grassroots power building and community organizing, can you talk a little bit more about your personal brand and what inspired you to really dedicate yourself to this work and writing your book? Uh-oh, you're on mute. Oops.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I come from a long line of women, like many of us do, who have faced impossible odds and have broken through barriers. And I always like to show a picture of my great grandmother because it was 150 years from when my grandmother was born until today. And that's 6 generations. And for me, my family eventually left Puerto Rico and moved to the States. And I know that my ancestors, when they made those choices, they didn't imagine that I would find myself as a graduate of Harvard University so few years afterwards. And being at Harvard was a crossroads for me. It showed me what real wealth, how it operates, and also helped me see the ways that I could be really impactful in making change, both at the university and then also as a grassroots community organizer. And so for many years, I have been working with people who are really the experts in their own lives. People are the experts in their own lives, in their own communities, and working alongside folks to make schools better, make affordable housing more available, better education, et cetera. I wrote the book a few years ago in part because I kind of wish that when I was starting out, there was someone who could hand me a book that looked like this. A lot of the manuals that we get about whatever it is that we're in, they're usually not written by us or by people that look like us. And I just wanted to be an encouragement and help Latinas and women of color more broadly see that sometimes the work we do is extremely important. It sometimes can feel somewhat tremendously difficult. You can feel like the work you're doing is not important, but it really, really is. And so in the book, I help people see the difference between just staying or waiting and really trying to achieve the work of thriving, which is more than just winning and being successful, but it's also doing that and being able to have a full, happy, and joyful life, which oftentimes we sacrifice everything for our business or for our work, and we forget about some of the things that are the most important to us. So, I hope 150 years from now, there's I have a granddaughter who's 7, and she, they're toothy when they're at that age. So I hope 150 years from now, there's a toothy little girl in my family who is able to benefit from all of the changes that I have helped to make, and all of these women as well. So I'm extremely grateful to be invited and really happy about the work of the Women's Foundation. So thanks.
Well, thank you so much. What an inspiration. And I'm going to want to dig in a little bit more to learn even more about, about your book and some of the, the recommendations and steps that you think individuals can take to help overcome those barriers and the systemic barriers that many women and people of color in our community face. But before we get into that, I want to turn it over to Destiny. And Destiny, I was so impressed in reading about you, and I know you were selected as the a Rockstar Fund recipient as part of the Young Women's Initiative. Can you share a little bit about what that program was like for you and the impact that it had on you?
Absolutely. First off, hi everyone. I really hope that this session is going great for you all because I'm actually learning so much and I'm feeling so inspired myself. But yes, I'm Destiny, and when I got the Rockstar Fund grant is essentially a grant of $2,000, and it's given to women or women and young girls aged 12 to 24 to produce projects that are basically like to produce projects addressing a social issue in their communities. And just when we talk about like dismantling barriers, I definitely feel like that's what the Young Women's Initiative is all about. Because being my destiny, which is what I founded, and a part of being my destiny is my dual work that I'll get into later. But being my destiny was a dream that I had actually 4 years ago, back when I was graduating high school in 2020. I said that I want to use my voice, like I want to motivate people using my voice. And growing up, it was always people around me that were so talented. I had people who could sing and people who could dance and artists all around me, and I was just like, Destiny, what's your talent? And it just ended up, I guess I just said it was my voice. So back in high school, I created a blog to motivate women on their journeys of purpose. But then with being my destiny, as a graduating senior now, it's been to have the Rockstar Fund. It's been absolutely amazing. So the way it's set up is that we have an amazing program officer, Chica, who she provides us mentorship and just support. And I think when we talk about dismantling barriers for women, that is a constant barrier that we always need. We always need people who are lifting as they climb. And she can provide amazing mentorship. And then we have like an education and training where we talk about self-care, professional development, but also personal development. And we're grounded in community. So it's I want to say around 10 of us Rockstar Fund grantees each year. And we have a community to lean on, a community of support, people who are wanting to be the same type of change maker as you are, and bring change in our communities. So the Rockstar Fund has been absolutely amazing. I think with my initiative for the Rockstar Fund, I created Change Make Hers Week, which is a week of investing into young ladies, high schoolers in DC, and providing them opportunity to really own who they are, define their butterfly, and learn how they can grow their wings. So it's sessions revolved around, understanding where you come from, who you are, and your background. So that's like writing poetry about your community, where you come from, your family, and then taking that artistic ability to kind of discuss what do you want to do in the future, and what does that look like, and really reflecting on a deeper level than sometimes we do when we're young. Sometimes we get a bit older and we kind of realize we had dreams when we were younger that we just never got a chance to do because life happens. So the point of Change Makers Week is to really identify, these have been your goals. And, no matter your situation, your background, you have all the possibilities in the world. You can become your destiny. You can own who you are by essentially thinking about that right now and then beginning with the end in mind. So it's high school students, and it's weekly sessions. And so far, and it's been wonderful just having that mentorship and support, because it's been times when I've had to pivot. Other Rockstar Funds, we created projects, but then we had to pivot from them as well. But having that community around you full of support, and just powerful young women, young change makers, and uplifting our voices has been something so beautiful. And lastly, as far as like dismantling barriers, a key barrier to really launching Being My Destiny has been money. I feel like, we can a lot of times as women women, we don't really invest as much in ourselves as we do others. So with the grant, it's been amazing because I had to actually like, Destiny, it's time for you to pour into you, right? This is money specifically used to better you in your life. So eliminating that financial barrier really allowed like my vision to come into fruition. And I think for all of us Rockstar Fund grantees is allowing us to dream of more. To, we already have this cushion, this idea that we're seeing into fruition, and then it's about how can we continue being of change agency. So the Rockstar Fund grant has been absolutely amazing.
Oh my
Beth,
gosh.
if you don't mind me jumping in right
No,
here,
you
I
go
have to
right ahead. I'm blown away.
Destiny, if you don't take my name down, I'm going to help you. I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to try to get you connected with some money. I want to volunteer for any space you think you can use me. And I'm telling you that right now. I mean it with all my whole heart. You are amazing young woman. And the sky's not even the limit for you. So anything I can do, I'm telling you right now, let's be in touch.
This is I mean, you just exemplified the thing I love most about this organization. I think women lifting one another up. And Destiny, you said, lift while she climbs. I think we just saw a perfect example of that in action. And I think that is why it is so important. And you brought up the significance of financial investments, right? And money. And at the end of the day, it is an absolutely critical part of being able to make change in the region. And having been involved with many nonprofits in my life, I recognize that there's a difference often between the role of financial investments and fundraising for women's related causes and many others. And I think it's really interesting to unpack that and look at it more deeply, because I think it's one of the things that perhaps stands in our way, and it takes people like Sonya to step up, raise her hand, and say, you know what? I am going to support you. I am going to invest in you because I believe in you. And I just, I just want to point to that because it's one of the most beautiful things about this organization. And I think one of the reasons that it warrants continued support and funding in this community. So you just brought that to life in this on this webinar. Let's talk about, though, I want to hear your perspective, and this is for any of you really. When we think about systemic barriers that exist, particularly for women of color, and we see Denise, is that your grandmother, your great grandmother, and what she had to overcome. What do you say to women out there in our community that maybe don't have the same worldview? They haven't been able to kind of be exposed to the kinds of leaders that, like those on this call. What do you say to them to help them kind of rise above that and find the inspiration and the support they need?
I think that what I say often to people when I'm, kind of closing up in my conversations is that that the vision and the beauty and all of the amazingness, Destiny, that you talked about, it will flow through you. It flowed through this woman who was kicked off her land with 6 girls before World War I, who had to raise them by herself, sewing. And many of us can tell stories about ancestors that we had. Now, this woman is a leader. She figured out how to organize herself and organize her little children. And from that came me, indirectly. But I really want us to really remember that a lot of systems, a lot of spaces were not made with us in mind.
That's
But
right.
we have so much of what it takes because it already flows through us. It is going to flow through you, Destiny, to the people who will one day call you ancestor. And so we just have to let it let it show. And, you know, Harvard wasn't made for me. The corporate boardrooms that we, you know, operate, they're not made for us necessarily. Latinas make up approximately 3% of corporate of nonprofit CEOs, despite the fact that Latinas are like 20%, you know, of the population. Latinos are 20% of the population, Latinas less. But there's because we are leaders, we have to be up on that tightrope leading. In part because there are so few of us, we don't have a choice. And leadership is a tightrope, even at my stage in the career. I'm sure Mrs. Ali would say the same thing, that even when you're at the top, there's a great book written by a friend of mine named Francine Parham that is called Please Sit Over There. You know, it's about exclusion, women's exclusion in corporate world. And she basically just talks about the importance of women supporting other women, and knowing that even when you're at the top of your organization with a lot of power and authority, you're still walking on a tightrope, and you're still vulnerable to, you know, falling off of the tightrope. And so just, I think reminding ourselves who we are. I love that it's, you know, my destiny. Reminding us, I came from that woman. That woman was a complete boss lady, and we all come from people like that. And so we walk into spaces that weren't made for us. We still have to find ways to lead into our vision, live into our fullest selves, and love past the negatives that might be holding us back.
You know, Denise, you said something that, you know, made me think. You've heard that saying, you know, each one teach one, but I think it's each one of us has to reach out. Yep. So each one reach one, and then teach, mentor, support. And I think those things are really important, and you definitely touched on that.
Absolutely. And Destiny, as a young woman with, you know, such passion and big dreams, what is your source of inspiration that keeps you going? What drew you into this work? I find in talking to women who are passionate about these issues that there's usually something deep inside that motivates. And I'm just curious, at your young age, what is it? It's so impressive what you've been able to do in 21 years. So you have to share.
Well, I feel so poured into. I'm just feeling so blessed. So thank you so much. I thank you all tremendously. And I think a part of that, when you were just asking about dismantling barriers and just adding on to what Denise says, a lot of what you need to do is remember like where you come from, and even like when you're at the pinnacle, when you're in the C-suite, you still need to go, you know, and you still need to be in places where you come from, like where you're not. And for me, a lot of like what motivates me is just, you know, my story, my life, how I grew up. And then I think about the women in my life who never had the opportunities I did. So, you know, I grew up, both my parents were recidivists, so they were always in and out the system. And so I grew up like very disconnected from everything. We didn't talk about politics because felony disenfranchisement. You know, we didn't talk about education. Or my mom was very clear to talk about education, but we didn't really know what that looked like, because my parents, you know, hadn't graduated high school. So for me to get to this point of like, you know, going to be pursuing a master's degree, it's like, I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And I think what motivates me most is just knowing, you know, these are opportunities that so many others haven't had. And your story can go either way. It's so quick and easy for you to end on different sides of the spectrum. And I think for me, that's why I want to work so hard as a change maker, because I could have easily been another person. Anyone in here could have easily been someone else. And in my birth work, in my doula work, you know, around being my destiny, I want to inspire marginalized minority women to boldly pursue their purposes. And in being my destiny, a part of that is butterfly birth work. So I work with teens in transitional housing shelters, and my mom was a teen mom. So like, you know, just knowing your history and knowing where you come from, it's so easy to pour back, because it could have so easily been you. So like, as a change maker, as a birth worker, you know, I want to hold up the women around me like I wish someone would have held up my mom, right? Like, my job is to support you, to tell you that you are loved, that you are strong. And if we just have that community around, if we as women, you know, constantly pour into each other, there's nothing that we can do. And so that's very essential. And then I'd also say focusing on wellness has been such an important aspect of my life during this time. And I feel like, when you're in change agency, when you're growing, when you're so passionate about stuff, it's so easily to get immersed, but then not understand your boundaries, and things of that nature. And I feel like for me, this has been a time where I've really been learning, Destiny, you really can't do it all, but what you can do matters, right? And I was reading this book called All Black Women Are Activists, and it was all about reimagining the world where you didn't have to do so much, right? Where you were firm in what you did do, and that was all that mattered. And if you prioritize your wellness, you have a bucket that's full, rather than trying to constantly pour and like just decreasing your inner wellness, your inner peace, and such heavy work. Like the work that we do is such heavy work. So I feel like if we can, focus on our wellness, that helps dismantle barriers as well, because we can best show up in the world as full selves, rather than people who are absorbing all the trauma that we're seeing around us, rather than people who aren't consistently being loved on, and things of that nature. So I think, yeah, prioritizing wellness is key, as well as just focusing on just overall knowing where you come from, and never forgetting that it's so easy to be any different way. Like the lifestyle could have been easily different. So yeah.
I'm gonna remember that I met you today. Because you're going to do great things. And honestly, just hearing your perspective on it, it's something that I think resonates with so many people who are on this call. Even me personally, I was also raised by a single mom who got pregnant in high school, and, had her share of challenges. And when I think about the pathway that I could have gone down, a lot of times I think people in those situations, for me, it was like finding sparks of hope that, and being able to see and envision a world that was different than the one that I had grown up in. And I think that that's partly the role that women leaders, who are dedicated to the community, really play, is helping just bring awareness to the life's journey, and know that it's not always a straight line, and that people overcome a lot in their lives, and that can be a source of hope and inspiration for people if they're going through a hard time. So I'd love to hear more, just from each of you, and maybe those of you who have a little more years under your belt, Sonya and Denise, about what are some of the challenges that you have faced and along the journey, and what have been the more rewarding moments for you, and kind of those deep lessons that you've learned. And for me, sometimes those lessons were the hard way.
Well, I think that the most difficult time for me, and like the both of you, Beth and Destiny, have said, your path could have gone one way or the other. Same for me. But I think the most difficult time for me was when I was in the military. And initially, I was at the Air Force Academy prep school, and women had not been there that long. And then just moving into the military and working for a lot of men, those were challenging. In aerospace medicine, you didn't have a lot of women. And so I had some challenging bosses, and, there was some discrimination, and so I took those lessons, and I think it made me stronger. So I'm a little more no nonsense in the business arena, um, than I might have been had I not had those experiences. So um, there have been challenges. I enjoyed the restaurant business. I say to anybody who's interested, work in the industry first before you. I'm not saying don't, carry out your dream of owning and operating, business, because you absolutely should, but know the industry and know it is a difficult industry and is a lot of hard work. It's 7 days a week, whether you're open 7 days a week or not.
Yeah.
Whether you have one team member or you have 80, they're all like your children. They all have needs. There's always something going on, and you have to be present all the time. So know what you're getting into, but definitely don't not pursue that dream if that's your passion. You know, there's a thing called, and my girlfriend, we just came back from 2 weeks in West Africa. It was a bunch of us. And we were having a conversation, some philosophical, some of the things we saw and experienced. And my mother's African. And I came back and we started talking about things that we're passionate about, but we never got to do. And I said, you know, there are things that I really want to do. And I'm 62 now. So there's more years behind me than there probably are ahead of me. And I said, but there are things that are just gnawing at my gut. And she said, those are called unctions, where it's basically God telling you, keep pushing forward. If that is something that is in your spirit, work through it, claim it. And so, you know, that was, you know, pretty profound for her to say that to me, because I never thought of it that way. So here I am at 62 doing a few extra things outside of the restaurant business.
And I'm guessing, Sonya, inspiring other restaurateurs in the country, in your involvement with the association, you know, inspiring other Black restaurateurs, you know, to continue on the journey, because it's not an easy journey. And, you know, I know that Ben's Chili Bowl is one of the 3 oldest Black-owned businesses in our region, is a landmark and an iconic part of, you know, the fabric of this region. And I think what a source of inspiration you must be around that table when you bring all the national restaurateurs together. What does that feel like as a woman of color in the room?
Well, I may have misspoke. So I'm not on the National Restaurant Association board. I'm on the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington. So that is local in the
Bill,
DMV.
probably the room looks very similar.
It does. And one of the things, Kathy Hollinger, who's a great friend and a
Oh, I
mentor.
love that.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Leadership,
And
Greater Washington.
yep. She told me years ago, she said, when she came on to these, so she said, I need the people sitting around the table to look like what the restaurants in DC that make up this region look like. And I need you to sit at the table. And I said, if that's what you need, I will do it for you. And I said, when you leave, I'll leave. Now she's gone, I'm still there.
I love it. I absolutely love it. We're glad you're there and just so grateful. And then Denise, how about you? I mean, again, you know, Latina women represent such a small minority of entrepreneurs and business leaders in the region. How do you engage to change that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in our families. The women are the pillars.
Mm-hmm.
So my titi Norma, she holds our entire family together. But if you were to ask her to come and speak in public, she would rather die. Right? And so I think some of it is like, we in our own spaces, there's a ton of leadership that gets exercised. And I just think that encouraging people, Ms. Sonya, that part of what the way I think about what you were experiencing is that's call, you know, that's your call. And when you hear something that is calling you, you have to lead into it, because in my book, I talk about that's your vision calling you. That's your vision. And for me, I made a choice to move to Puerto Rico recently, partly because I felt it was like a pounding drum that would not stop. It just would not stop. And finally I said, okay, I'm moving to Puerto Rico because I want to reclaim some of what was lost when my family left the island. Destiny, a cool story and a way of connecting all of us. When I was in college, I did work study. I didn't get any support from Harvard. In the end, my parents declared bankruptcy to get me through Harvard. And then, just as you know, Harvard always get their money. So I worked as a waitress. I worked day shifts and night shifts in California, where I grew up, as a wait staff during summers. And one summer, I just say I speak, Miss Ali, because the people who uphold the restaurant business, it's hard, it's sweaty, it's requires a lot of everything, brains and brawn and toughness and all of that. But when I was a senior in college, I received a $1,000 grant from the Ford Foundation. I would say to the people at Ford now, that should have been 10,000. And same to you, that 2,000 should be 20,000. They need to add a zero. But I got a $1,000 grant from the Ford Foundation to help write my thesis. And ever since I've been involved in organizing, I've always raised money. That's been one thing. I've raised over $134 million for grassroots community organizations. And part of that is because I've learned that if I have a vision, I need to have the money to pay for it. And so just an encouragement to you. In part, I wrote my book and I wrote it at night and on the weekends, and like we do, right? We have these, I worked full time, but then you have this little side project. But then I brought my book out into the world, and a friend asked me to come present at her organization. And as a result of that, my organization landed a $25 million grant. And so just know, Destiny, like 1,000 turns into millions as you go along the journey. And so, you know, your business and also your philanthropy and all of you, I can't even imagine how many children you've already birthed. I'd love to know, put it in the chat or something, but you know, it grows. And I would say to you, Miss Sonya, like, people are talking now about the 70-year career. You don't look anywhere near like you're going to slow down anytime soon. So I'm really excited to see what you're doing next. I've always wanted to go to law school, and I've been kind of putting it off. My husband's like, by the time you graduate from law school, you'll be pushing a walker. I'm like, I will not. So there is no limit to our ability to continue to make change, and it just gets exponential as you make more impact. So I'm very excited to be part of this. And I think one thing I would offer, you know, for you all at the Women's Foundation is, in my book, I wrote a chapter that's called Integrating Family and Work. And I wrote it because as activists and as entrepreneurs and leaders, we have a big appetite. I'll say it like that. And we do often forget to take care of ourselves. So in my organization that I was with, we instituted a family work integration plan, which allowed people 20% of their time to focus on their own creativity. And I will be happy to basically gift that chapter to anybody who is on this call to the Women's Foundation as an example of ways that we can take care of ourselves while taking care of all those children that work for you, Miss Ali, you know, the people that really become part of your family as you lead with them. So yeah, happy to share that. You know, I'll share the chapter with y'all.
Denise, that's very generous, and I would love it if you would put the link to the book so we can download the book. Because after hearing you speak, I'm actually dying to read it and to hear all your words of wisdom. So, and by the way, if anyone has questions, I can't see the Q&A, but I can see the chat. So feel free to post any questions you have for the panelists in the chat. But I wanna ask you each to talk a little bit about, when you look at the landscape of what's going on in our country and in our community, what scares you right now? What is your biggest fear? And I know this has been a very positive conversation. I don't want to go on a negative note, but I'm curious what you think are the bigger barriers that we need to be paying attention to right now.
I have a thought I'll share, and you know, just give space for others. I really wonder whether our people, my people, let's talk about people here in Puerto Rico, but I think Black and brown folks and people who are looking to actually build a multiracial democracy, which hasn't existed yet. I wonder if people really are ready to govern. And I think that's a little bit of a fear that I have, is that my daughter's generation is like, you know, but There's so many opportunities for us to lead. Here in Puerto Rico, there's $80 billion that Puerto Rico is sitting on for infrastructure, like bridges and all, you know, what we just saw in the last couple of days. Terrible, terrible tragedy. But there's $80 billion sitting in government that activists like you, Destiny, you know, organizing leaders could be actually tapping into. But I worry that people are so ready to give up on the possibility of governance. I mean, like if Miss Ali were to run for a political office, she would win. Maybe that's not what she chooses to do. If I were to do that. So I just think, are people actually ready to govern this country? And that's what I believe that we have the capacity to. Not sure whether there is the will. And I know there's a lot of other people who would love to determine what my life looks like. But I actually think that I know better what's good for me. So I think we need to really look at whether we're willing to govern.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, when this coming year is going to shed a lot of light on that willingness. And, you know, I know that a lot of the young people, especially, are raising their hands. And that's what gives me hope that the future, you know, the readiness, it is a journey. It is not something, it is not a light switch. It is not something that
Right.
we can depend on without the next generation. But when I am on a call like this and I meet people like Destiny, I feel so much hope that the future leadership is going to be represented, you know, the people in our community who really matter most.
I just wish Destiny was ready right now.
I know, Destiny, we're
Because
ready.
this
Destiny for
year
president.
is
Exactly.
very scary and ominous, and we're on a very good trajectory in 2008, and now I'm just so afraid that, you know, that someone with such horrible rhetoric and can
Yeah.
say these things that you know, and people don't see through it, that he has so much support. It just, you know, it is very scary to me. And then my friends, we talk about if we could leave, but I don't think that's the answer. I don't think we need to leave. I think we need to take action.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think that is, I think the strength and the strength that we can find in one another is that's what's going to change the landscape moving forward, because um, you know, it is going to take a movement. It's not just, you know, this is, you know, centuries of systemic barriers that are going to take time to chip away. And I think there is a frustration and an exhaustion, and that, Denise, is probably part of what you were referencing. But when we think about our communities here, I was heartened yesterday personally to see that you know, in the district that we're going to be retaining our sports teams. I've been very worried about the District of Columbia and its economic recovery. How are you all feeling about the community and Sonya, you in particular, because you're really on the front lines in U Street corridor and all of your locations? How do you feel about the community and the health of the community in the district right now?
I think that is the one thing that I am very comfortable and happy with, is the community. And the community is what has sustained us for 65 years. And we feel like when you walk through our doors, you come in as a guest, but you leave as family. That's how we treat you. People come back. And that kind of radiates beyond the business. That's how we operate. And we get that from our matriarch. It's in us, but she really, you know, exemplifies that. But the community is there for us and it has never changed. It's never wavered. Even during the pandemic, U Street never closed. We were there for the community, and the community was there for us. There was a time, there was an article that came out in the Post during the time, like, Ben's, don't let Ben's close, or something like that. And you would not believe the people who wrote us checks, $25, $50. We cannot let this iconic institution close. And there was this grassroots effort to keep Ben's, going, even though that was not our reality. And what we did with that money is put it into our foundation, and we fed thousands and thousands and thousands of frontline workers, over 10,000 meals we did during that time, with donations that we received, and to feed those people who were out, fighting that good fight. So I don't think that you can be in a community and not be a part of it. And we are entrenched in
Are.
this community. And I think we always will be till, the next generations of us that we hope will continue on this family legacy.
Yeah. Destiny, what do you want to say to, when you think about community leaders in this region and, just you obviously envision a world that looks different in the future, and you have already begun to work toward it. But what do you say to those folks that are, making the decisions today? And what do they need to hear from your generation?
That is a really beautiful question. And I think on behalf of my generation, I want to say that Gen Z does not have it all figured out, and Gen Z still needs all the help we can get. When you were talking about struggles in our community, I think a lot of people are losing hope. In reality, I feel like a lot of people are feeling like, we're fighting battles that we may not win. And that's causing us to look at different outcomes, like what if we do leave? What happens if we stop fighting? And, it seems like no outcome is the outcome we want. And I think Gen Z is like a huge mental health crisis, I would say. I feel like a lot of
Yes.
um, people in our community are, just battling so much, so much. But at the same time, with that battle, it is constant fight, right? And I think when we talk about dismantling barriers and everything like that, I do feel like rest can be resistance. And I've been seeing so much promotion of self-care, so much promotion of rest. And I think that's ultimately helping us to get to the point where we can, take on all of what all generations before us have been fighting for, right? So it's kind of double-sided, where some of us are just like, it just seems like the world can never be the dream that we want. And then it's the other side of us that's like, well, it'll never be what we want unless we continue fighting. So I think Gen Z just wants, just wants support. We want support. We want to continue to fight. We want to know that there's going to be resources for us. We want to know that, people still believe in the cause. And yeah, I think that's what we're struggling with right now.
Thank you. Denise, you mentioned your great success in raising funds and really generating huge resources. Can you share any insight about how that came to be, and any advice for those of us in the community that are really struggling with that every day?
Yeah. I think it started when I brought home that first piece of paper for chocolate sales at school.
Oh, I remember the chocolate bar sales.
Yeah, right. I brought it home and promptly handed my dad the form and asked him to take it to work. And he promptly handed it back to me and told me to go out in the neighborhood and knock on the doors in the neighborhood and ask myself. And so I did. And then I learned how to do things I was going to run in like a walkathon. So it started then, really early on, when I think the message that was conveyed to me is, you're young, you're a girl, you can go do that. You don't need me to do that for you. And so that message always stayed in me. And I had, I would say when I was graduated from college, I thought, like, this world is mine to conquer. And then over time, life teaches you all kinds of humility and lessons. But I think one thing was just getting over the fear of asking. And just asking all the time, like, people should be giving today to the Washington Area Women's Foundation, right? I encourage you to do that. It's not hard to ask people, but there is some psychological barriers that we often have because of our own personal experiences with money. You know, money was in everyone's family, money is an issue. And so whether like you didn't have enough, you had too much, whatever, but we all have issues with money. But what I learned early on was it was the Latino program officers who backed me up earliest. They were my earliest backers. So, you know, go reach out to the people that are in different foundations that you know, or that you see that there's a person that looks like you. Call them up, reach out, send an email, join, ask them to be your friend on LinkedIn. And I know LinkedIn is kind of like it's like a professional network, but that's where a lot of the people in philanthropy live. So get over there if you're not. And so it's just not being afraid to ask for, I mean, we got 25 million because we asked for 50. And so I think, man, we could have asked, they didn't tell us how much to ask for. We could have asked for 3 and we would have gotten 3. But I'm thinking we were thinking 10 years out, we need 5 million a year for 10 years to do these X things. So 50 would be great. And we got 25. So I think always asking for much more than, and then also I ran a business for 5 years, you know, in between all of this, and, you know, figuring out ways to monetize what we're doing. And so my book is a way, right? I'm not going through, I mean, it's available via Amazon, but I'm going through my website because the author and, you know, you get a better price and then more money of it can go to the fund. And so really thinking, you know, people at Destiny, I would say, as you grow and when people ask you to come speak, ask them how much they're going to pay you to do that. Because you're badass, you're like a light. So they need some light in their space, they need to pay for it. So things like that. How do you monetize what you have? How do you ask for what you need? How do you find ways to generate automatic revenue so that you're not always having to go, you know, beg and ask for the money? But my orientation towards money is there's plenty. There is enough. We just have to go get it.
Well, my goodness, I don't know about, I think someone needs to get recruited to the Women's Foundation Development Committee. Denise, because that is incredibly inspiring, because I've been involved in philanthropic fundraising for decades, and I see very different patterns of behavior in male-dominated boards than in female-dominated boards. And it's really fascinating to look at some of those behavioral differences and just hearing you dispel all of it and just say, just ask, just go out there and be bold and point to the work, point to the impact of the work, point to the mission, and it will get funded. That is so inspirational, because oftentimes I find that's a big challenge with supporting these types of organizations where, you know, women tend to defer to often their male spouse, either husbands or other partners. So there's a lot of, you know, I think there's a mindset shift in terms of we need to be bold if we want the world to look different. And as you know, Destiny goes up and starts running, you know, the world. And that's what we want. Like when we want the world to look different, we have to hold hands, and we have to find ways of speaking our truth and connecting that with.
I also find just to be because, you know, when you're in a poor community, the generosity is just, it's mind-boggling. And sometimes in philanthropy, the higher you get, the more scarcity mentality there is, and it makes no sense. And it's usually not the people who have the wealth, it's the people who are wealth proximate.
Yeah. Well, and let me just close this out. I can't believe we only have a minute left. I feel like we should have made this a little longer, but you know, I do hope that those of you who are joining us today can step up and make a contribution to the Washington Area Women's Foundation. I think it's an investment in the future that we all hope for and envision. I just want to thank these incredible women for joining me today. Sonya, Destiny, and Denise, you are all just incredibly inspiring. And I hope that I see you soon at a Women's Foundation event. Thank you very much.
And thank you all. So nice to meet you, and so happy that the Women's Foundation invited me today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank y'all so much. It's been so amazing. Thank you all.
You're amazing.
You're amazing.
Absolutely
Denise.
amazing. Stay in touch.
Yeah.
No, we want to say we knew her when.
Oh, I will. And Denise, I've attended 5 births, but this summer I hope to work with incarcerated birthing people. So, and I'll be out of school, so I hope to do a lot more in the future too.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So
What an
beautiful.
inspiring young woman. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.